Welcome to Move the Needle. My name is Marlana Semenza. I am a photographer and visual strategist, and I frame the way you are seen and understood by your clients and audience. And please join me today in welcoming Jonathan. John, tell everybody what your name is and what you do.
Hello there. So my name is John Mahan. I'm an account executive at a company called BombBomb. It's a video email communication software. I'm also the host of the Ngari Video Confidence podcast, which is dedicated to helping people get more comfortable and confident on camera.
Perfect. And what is your tip that you can give all of us to move the needle on our business or brand?
So this actually is something that came from a gentleman named Jay Acunzo. So if you're familiar with Jay Acunzo, go check him out. He runs an agency called Marketing Showrunners. He has a podcast called Unthinkable. And a lot of what I said comes directly from him. And a lot of what I'm going to say is kind of a spin-off from it. But his quote that got me really started thinking about marketing differently is he says that marketing is no longer about who shows up. It's about who stays. Because what you see very typically in the world of content marketing is this almost one-off approach, right? Where you create a piece of content, you throw it out there, it does well. You create a different piece of content, and each content more or less functions independently. Some are hits, some are misses, and you just kind of do the best you can. But each piece is independent. And what he's saying is that that's not enough anymore, right? A single blog post can get people to show up, but how do you get people to stay? How do you get people to continually come back to your brand? How do you get them pulled into what you're doing? And a lot of his answer to that is, serialized content, right? Creating some kind of a show where one piece of content ties to the next, and people get pulled in, and they want to keep coming back, right? To see how this story progresses. But the thing that I really took out of this, which is it really changed the way I think about marketing, is that in order to get people to stay, you have to do more than just repeat what you did to get them to show up. Which means your strategy that's working well today, you can't just repeat that for the next 5 years, right? You need to change it up. I work with a lot of people in email sequences, right? Because my product is a video email product. So I work with people on how to build video email follow-up sequences. And for my entire career, my thought around building email follow-up systems was a matter of let's come up with a bunch of topics people find relevant. Let's create a different email for each topic they'll find useful and helpful and valuable, and have a nice call to action in it, and just kind of deploy it. And it really didn't matter what order things went in, right? There were a few emails that I tagged as, oh, this will be a good early one. A few emails I tagged as this will be a good late one. But pretty much you could change up the order of these email sequences. It wouldn't matter. But taking this, principle from what Jay shares, that's not enough. You have to be changing and evolving your content over time. In fact, Jay even talks about how you have different parts of your content, the ways people would describe your content are called anchors, right? And you have to make a systematic adjustments to these, right? So, one example, people get used to watching The Bachelor, and The Bachelor is very successful, but they can't keep repeating that show exactly as is over and over again and get 20 seasons. So what do? They release Bachelor in Paradise, and now they're in a different location. So now one of the anchors of how you describe the show just changed, and now you're in a different location, right? Sometimes in TV shows, they'll mix up the characters a little bit, right? House was a show that ran for how many seasons, and the characters constantly changed. Grey's Anatomy, like most shows change characters. Part of that, of course, because actors, kind of move around in their career and do different things. But a big part of that is intentional as well. If you can't keep repeating the same strategy over and over again, which means that if you were to take a well-done email sequence, let's talk about a follow-up sequence or something, you could actually scramble the whole thing and put it back together more or less in order without even, knowing anything about how it was originally set up based on what you see, right? Because the early emails will be the most basic, and then you'll roll out some slight adjustments to them, and then you'll roll out some slight adjustments, and then you'll roll out some slight adjustments. And over time, you could unscramble this puzzle and put it back together in the right order because, again, it actually matters what order. You're not just taking the same strategy and repeating it 50 times over. You're continually changing and tweaking your strategy. So this changed how I did my LinkedIn content, right? Because, again, my LinkedIn content used to be a matter of, well, let's just come up with ideas of what will be useful to people, and let's just make videos about that. And that was it. And that worked really well. But, then after 6 months or a year, I started noticing a small dip in engagement. And one of, again, Jay's quotes is you need to change what's working while it's still working. You don't wait until you start to see the drop off to go, oh, shoot, we need to come up with something new. While something's actively still working, you need to make tweaks and adjustments to it, right? Bring in new flavors. My podcast is another example of this, right? I started off just interviewing people on their experiences, and that was it. And I loved it. It was great content and people loved it. And basically it was sit down with people and say, hey, talk to me about your journey getting comfortable on camera. But then while that was still working, I realized, you know what? We need to switch things up a little bit. Still stay true to the theme. So then I started bringing a series where I'm interviewing experts on different topics, right?
Mm.
Experts on, how to control your body language during a video, experts on, how to use generosity to overcome your discomfort, experts on, getting the right lighting for your videos, right? And the right visual appeal. So now it's just a slight modification, so things are being changed up. Maybe we're about 15 episodes in, and now I'm making this shift to, instead of just interviewing people about their experiences, now we're interviewing experts on the topic. And, we'll let that run for 15 episodes and probably make another slight strategic shift, right? Where again, we're just kind of adjusting what Jay Akunzo calls these anchors, right? Of how people would describe the show. So the takeaway here is, right, marketing is not about who shows up, it's about who stays.
Mm-hmm.
You need to change what's working while it's still working. Most companies will just ride a wave as long as they can, and then eventually it stops working, and then they go into panic mode and they start innovating at random because they got to figure something out because the old stuff doesn't work anymore. Those changes, those bits of creativity aren't necessarily random, right? You don't just suddenly start pulling ideas out of nowhere. There is a systematic approach to saying, all right, let's analyze the anchors of our show, how people would describe it, what makes it what it is, and let's just start tweaking one at a time and make a little adjustment here, right? So maybe if it's a podcast, you go from one host to suddenly having two co-hosts. That adds an extra layer of complexity to things. Again, maybe you change up the location, maybe you change up the type of content just a little bit, still staying true to the theme, but making minor adjustments on the outskirts. And again, you do this systematically. And then the other quote that I always keep running through my mind is, to get people to stay, you have to do more than repeat what you did to get them to show up.